Добрый день, друзья. Моя речь будет на русском языке. Кто не понимает, возьмите, пожалуйста, наушники, будет перевод.
And interpretation into English will be provided from Russian. Well, welcome. Hello once again. Can you hear me? I will tell you about what is happening in Russia, what has happened over the last 20 years in public art, and I will speak about some of the projects I have participated in, starting with the 90s. What you see here on the screen. If any one of you haven't been to Moscow, this is not, this is a real sculpture which has been installed in the city, and it's a symbol of the 90s. How many meters? Perhaps 100 meters. It's really difficult to count. It's Peter the First, a sculpture which should glorify the fleet of Russia. And in 1990s, when Zurab Tsereteli made it, he was a friend of previous mayor Lushkov. And when in 1990s this sculpture was placed in Moscow, it really caused protests, in huge protests. 100,000 people were protesting that the city was changing, and now some kind of transformer which as a child's toy should be 15 to 20 centimeters big, is now growing huge and is placed in the city. And these protests were headed by Marat Galmay, the most radical gallery owner in Moscow. And the response was so huge that the power really became frightened. He was collecting signatures for demolishing this country, but then it turned out that in order to demolish the sculpture, $1 million were needed, and the city just did not have the money, that kind of money. And then somehow, to calm down Gelmont and artist community, at that time the power in Moscow changed its artistic taste radically and invited Gelmont to implement his own public project in the city, and that would be a project of contemporary art. Gelmont wanted to gauge in his own gallery, and that's why he invited me to join into this project and to manage the project. And I will tell you about this wonderful experience. Here we see the oldest Russian artist who started creating such minimalism in the middle of 1950s, Zlatnikov, who is now over 80. He is well over 80, this artist now. And the events unfolded in the following way. We were told that no commission should be organized, that we would be the ones to take the decisions. And near Kremlin we have a huge block which is called Gostinny Dvor, which is one of the largest squares in Europe, covered squares. And the authority of Moscow decided to cover this square with a glass dome. And so this square is now covered. And the idea was that objects of contemporary art should be placed there. And of course we invited the most radical contemporary Russian artists who should have made the most radical artworks, and the powers and the authorities were in raptures. One, for example, suggested making a monument to someone who has overdosed drugs in the case of a huge, gigantic needle, and someone else proposed to build a vertical wall of Kremlin. And that was also and the response was good, and so on and so forth. And I invited Zlotnikov, this wonderful minimalist who became famous in 1950s with artworks like these. And he made, as you hear, this is now enlarged. The sketch was a matchbox size. And he said that something would be made out of metallic metallic pipes. And of course he was sitting several months on this work and sort of moving around those metallic parts. And everything was wonderful. I was managing the project until we came to those sculptures. And how to make cost estimates and how to calculate the royalties for the artist. I thought that we would pay to all the artists, 20 artists, equal royalty payments, because it's very difficult to measure the talent and the input, but since we were spending the municipality budget, it was not that simple. I was sent to an organization which was making cost estimates. An old lady was sitting there. I thought she would be very surprised by those artworks, those huge needles, those metal pipes. She was not surprised by anything. She got out of a drawer an old book she had been using for the last 50 years. And I thought, well, and I asked her, how can we find such artwork in this book? And she said, don't you worry, we've got everything in this book. And she was counting and counting and decided that the royalty payment for this sculpture to the artist would be less than her payment for her for making the cost estimate. This payment would be, well, the artist could buy a pie with a jam near the entrance to an underground. That was because she calculated if the work was a very simple geometrical form, then the cost estimate, that the royalty would be 3 kopecks. Complicated geometric form 4. If you have an animal, then it would be already a ruble. And figure full size, that would be 100. Multiple figures, 1,000 rubles. So, and actually we found out that all artists according to this book, all artists could be paid the lowest minimum royalty. And the work is paid for if the artists have made a model in clay or in plaster or in granite, and then the artist would be paid certain royalty. And the artist did not fall into this within this program. And the old lady told me, I saw that you are really unexperienced. You had to come before you started all this to me. I would have told you all those best positions, and you would have made wonderful, wonderful sculptures. And I copied out those items from that book, and actually I understood that all this sculpture was made on the basis of that old book on cost estimates. And I believe that we should inverse it and pay 1 ruble to the artist for that complicated figure. But this project was closed due to economic crisis, and the project was not implemented. And so I don't understand, why was the municipal power demanding us to create these programs, to artworks, to create? I had to go to the meeting every week with the mayor of the city and the person who was responsible for all construction work and all money in the city. I had access to all information. I was going to those meetings. And I was also one person was also working with us who had to take care of the security. After the first meeting, he told me, even if you disclose even 1 word that you have heard during those meetings, I won't be able to protect you. So that was the city life. Then the economic crisis started and these programs were not implemented. As I understood, the idea was the following. As soon as the journalists started investigating where the money was going in the municipality, the way $500 million were disappearing, then immediately the municipal power started shouting, we are supporting contemporary art, because everybody wanted to see art. And here you see Anish Kapoor near Royal Academy in London. For this artwork, according to which was not made in plaster, which was not made in clay, and this was a simple geometrical form. He would be paid 100 rubles apparently. And this Marat Gelman, and then Marat Gelman was invited to go to Perm. In Perm they decided, and because the mayor and the governor were very progressive, and they decided to try placing sculptures in public space.
The town is very depressive visually, and the mayor decided that such colorful figures would be liked very much by people, but actually the opposite happened. The people demanded these headless transformers to be removed, same as the Peter I sculpture was demanded to be removed. Another sculpture installed in Perm, the work of art by an Ukrainian artist, an apple, half-eaten apple made from brick. The local residents demanded this apple to be removed too, and a huge P letter made from wood. Wood is a symbol of Perm. It was kind of a triumphal arc in the shape of a Russian letter P by artist Nikolai Palevsky. The artist who decided that sculptures should best of all be placed away from towns, and he organized a festival of sculptures in a forest. And the previous and these are all of his artworks. This artist hires local farmers from local villages, and farmers make different shapes such as Babylonian towers out of farming materials such as hay and wood, and the artist paid the farmers, and he is actually worshipped by local farmers. And this is his best project. In wintertime, local farmers were making an army of snowmen. Thousands of snowmen were marching towards the village. The sculptures, of course, gradually were destroyed by time as it got warmer. And this theme, sculptures taken out into public space but away from towns, into rural environment, is a very interesting topic. This artwork is in Japan, 400 kilometers from Tokyo. This is there is Echibotsu Maru Triennale, during which artworks are made in forests or in mountains. And this is an artwork which represents Japanese poetry about farmers. It takes 2 kilometers walking to see these farmers, to reach these farmers. Another work by one of my good friends, a wonderful artist, Yuri Albert. He suggested that in all places of the world such road signs should be placed. Road signs which tell you how far you are from outstanding spots of world art. For example, Louvre Museum is 2,836 kilometers away. Tretyakov Gallery is 27 kilometers away. This actual road sign was meant to be placed in Moscow, but such road signs can be placed anywhere in the world. This project was not implemented. It was by Olga Chernyshova, a wonderful Russian artist. Fences which are with holes in them as if made by somebody who broke out from enclosure. In Russia, artists were offered to place artworks in public space, but due to political and economic reasons, none of the artworks were implemented. But this is where we came to in the course of 20 years. This sculpture was meant to be placed in Moscow on 14th November in 2 weeks' time. It somewhat resembles Peter the Great. It is a sculpture by Vladimir, the baptizer, who baptized Russians. But this sculpture is somewhat meant to remind us of another Vladimir, who is now ruling Moscow. Therefore, it was decided to place the sculpture near the university and to be of the same size as Peter the Great. Another scandal followed. There was a great outrage. 40 or 50,000 signatures against placing the sculpture near university were collected, and then it was decided to place it near Lugatsky Square there, but this decision also failed to be implemented, and the last decision by municipality was to place the sculpture near the Kremlin. And this sculpture had actually to be ready already, but luckily it turned out that this spot is part of the UNESCO zone, part of the zone where protected by UNESCO. And now this is a picture of the sculptor who is making the sculpture strictly following the book of the calculation of costs which are described. This is this is the artist who is Vladimir, whom he is meant to be praising through his artwork. And a small artwork which I managed to implement, I received a very strange offer from a business company. They said, we have a customer office, but we want this customer office to be a contemporary artwork. I said, no problem. And this is what I made for them. A concrete slab. This is a construction company, actually. And from this slab there is steel wires protruding, but from a certain angle you can read the sales office. And this is what the company wanted. And as far as I know, this is the only artwork implemented in Russian public space over the recent decades. Thank you for your attention.